The morning sun cast long shadows across the sprawling compound of Earth Defense Command as Admiral Kim Tae-ho walked briskly toward the communication center. His coffee had gone cold hours ago, but sleep seemed impossible after the overnight discovery. The massive radio telescope arrays that dotted the hillside around the facility hummed with activity. Their dishes pointed toward the stars like enormous ears listening to the universe. Inside the sterile white corridors, technicians moved with urgent purpose. Dr. Park Min-seo stood before a wall of monitors displaying wavelength patterns that made no sense to anyone except the small team of scientists who had been working around the clock for the past 72 hours. The patterns were unlike anything they had ever seen from deep space. "Admiral, you need to see this," Dr. Park said without turning around. Her voice carried the weight of exhaustion and something else that made Admiral Kim's stomach tighten with worry. "We've been receiving this signal for 3 days now. At first, we thought it was just cosmic background noise, but the pattern is too organized, too deliberate." The main screen flickered to life, showing a complex series of mathematical symbols that seemed to pulse with their own rhythm. Below the symbols, English text appeared line by line as the translation computer worked to decode the message. Admiral Kim read the words aloud, his voice growing quieter with each sentence. "Primitive species of the third planet from your star. Your electromagnetic emissions pollute the sacred frequencies of space. The Galactic Confederation of 12 Worlds has monitored your chaotic broadcasts for sufficient time. We find your radio signals disruptive to the advanced communication networks that connect civilized species across this galaxy." Dr. Park pointed to the next section of text as it appeared. "This is where it gets interesting, Admiral. They're not just complaining about our radio signals, they're making demands. The Confederation requires immediate cessation of all electromagnetic transmissions from your world. You have 30 rotations of your planet to send a message of compliance. Failure to respond appropriately will result in orbital cleansing of your transmission sources. This is not a negotiation. This is a final warning." The room fell silent, except for the gentle hum of computers and the distant sound of technicians working in other parts of the building. Admiral Kim stared at the screen, reading the message again. The words seemed surreal, like something from a science fiction movie rather than a real threat to Earth. "How many species did you say signed this?" he asked. 12 different linguistic patterns in the original transmission," Dr. Park replied. "Our best analysis suggests this comes from a coalition of alien civilizations. They're not just one species making threats. This is an organized group with enough confidence to demand we stop all radio communications." Admiral Kim walked to the window overlooking the radio telescope array. Each dish represented decades of human achievement in space communication. The Arecibo Observatory in Puerto Rico, the Very Large Array in New Mexico, the radio telescopes in Australia and South Africa. All of them had been listening to the stars for generations, searching for exactly this kind of contact with alien intelligence. "Ironic," he muttered. "We've been trying to talk to aliens for 50 years, and when they finally respond, they want us to shut up." 3 hours later, Admiral Kim stood in the secure conference room of the Blue House in Seoul. President Lee Dae-hai sat at the head of a table surrounded by military advisors, scientists, and government officials. The same message that had arrived at Earth Defense Command was now being discussed in similar rooms in Washington, Moscow, Beijing, and every other major capital on Earth. "The timing gives us exactly 30 days to respond," President Lee said, her voice steady despite the magnitude of the situation. "Our analysis teams confirmed that this message was sent using technology far beyond our current capabilities. The energy required to broadcast across interstellar distances with this level of clarity suggests these beings have access to power sources we can barely imagine." General Bae Jun-ho, the head of South Korea's space defense program, leaned forward. "Madam President, we need to consider that this might be a test. Perhaps they want to see how we respond to pressure. Do we surrender immediately, or do we show some backbone?" "What backbone?" asked Dr. Song Hairen, the country's leading expert on electromagnetic theory. "They're threatening to destroy our communication infrastructure from space. We have no weapons that can reach beyond our own moon, and they're clearly operating from much farther away than that. President Lee turned to Admiral Kim. What's your assessment of their capabilities? Based on the signal strength and the fact that they knew enough about our technology to specifically target our radio transmissions, I'd say they've been watching us for some time. They understand our capabilities better than we understand theirs. That puts us at a significant disadvantage in any kind of confrontation. As the meeting continued, similar discussions were taking place around the world. Some leaders called for immediate surrender, arguing that humanity had no choice but to comply with the alien demands. Others suggested a more defiant response, though none could explain how Earth might defend itself against beings capable of interstellar travel and communication. But in a research facility hidden beneath the mountains outside Seoul, Dr. Yoon Ji-woo was making a discovery that would change everything. The aliens had made one crucial mistake in their ultimatum. They had revealed something about their own technology that might give humanity an unexpected advantage. 25 days remained when Dr. Yoon Ji-woo made her breakthrough in the Yar underground laboratory beneath Mount Jiri. The facility had been built during the Cold War as a secret communications bunker, but now it served as humanity's last hope. Banks of computers lined the walls, their screens glowing with quantum equations that would have seemed like magic to scientists just 50 years earlier. Han Soo-jin, look at this, Dr. Yoon called to her research assistant. The young woman hurried over, her footsteps echoing in the concrete chamber. On the main monitor, wave patterns danced in complex spirals that looked almost alive. I've been analyzing the alien transmission for weeks, Dr. Yoon explained, pointing to specific sections of the display. Everyone focused on translating their words, but I've been studying how they sent the message. The carrier wave uses quantum entanglement principles that are incredibly advanced, but they have one major weakness. Han Soo-jin squinted at the data. What kind of weakness? Their quantum communication system requires perfect mathematical harmony. Every signal has to follow precise patterns, like a symphony where every note must be exactly right. But our radio waves are messy and chaotic. We broadcast everything from rock music to emergency signals to television shows. Our electromagnetic noise is completely random, and that randomness interferes with their quantum networks in ways they never expected. Dr. Yoon pulled up another screen showing Earth's radio spectrum over the past decade. The display looked like a wild storm of electromagnetic activity, with spikes and valleys that followed no predictable pattern. They called our signals primitive, but primitive doesn't mean weak. Sometimes chaos can be more powerful than order. 3 floors above, Admiral Kim Tae-ho coordinated the most secret military operation in human history. In a room marked only as communication planning, he met with Captain Oh Min-jun and a team of engineers who had been working without sleep for days. Status report, Admiral Kim said as he entered the room. Captain Oh consulted his tablet. We've established secure links with every major radio telescope and communication facility on Earth. Arecibo, the Very Large Array, Goldstone, Parks, Lovell, and 43 other installations are now connected to our central control system. The I network includes every military communications satellite currently in orbit. What about the international cooperation? Admiral Kim asked. Surprisingly good, Captain O replied. When you're facing extinction, countries tend to put aside their differences. The Russians gave us access to their deep space communication arrays. The Chinese are sharing their satellite network. Even the European Space Agency has put their facilities under our temporary command. Meanwhile, at the Arecibo Observatory in Puerto Rico, Dr. Song Hye-rin monitored alien communications with equipment that had been hastily modified over the past 3 weeks. The massive radio dish, normally used for astronomical research, had been converted into the most sensitive alien surveillance device on Earth. They're getting impatient, she reported during the daily briefing to Earth Defense Command. I'm detecting increased chatter between their ships. They're using quantum burst communications every few hours, probably coordinating their attack plans. Can you tell how many ships they have? Admiral Kim asked over the secure video link. At least 12, possibly more. They're positioned beyond our moon, using its gravity to hide their exact location. But their quantum signals give away their presence every time they communicate with each other. Back in the underground facility, Dr. Yoon Ji-woo worked with her team to solve the most complex puzzle of their lives. They needed to create a signal that would not just interfere with alien communications, but completely overload their quantum networks. Think of it like this, she explained to the group of physicists and engineers gathered around the central workstation. Their quantum communication is like a perfectly tuned piano. Every note must be exactly right, or the whole song falls apart. We're going to hit that piano with a sledgehammer made of pure electromagnetic chaos. Han Soo-jin raised her hand. But won't they just adapt to our interference? Not quickly enough, Dr. Yoon replied with a smile that didn't reach her tired eyes. Quantum systems are incredibly powerful, but they're also fragile. Once we disrupt their entanglement patterns, it will take them several minutes to re-establish communications. In a space battle, several minutes might as well be several hours. As the deadline approached, Captain Oh Min-jun oversaw the final preparations at installations around the world. At the Deep Space Network facility in California, technicians made last-minute adjustments to transmission equipment that had been pushed far beyond its original design specifications. In Australia, engineers worked through the night to synchronize their radio telescopes with counterparts on the other side of the planet. The timing has to be perfect, Captain O explained to his team leaders during their final briefing. Every facility must transmit at exactly the same moment. Even a delay of 1 second could ruin the interference pattern we're trying to create. Colonel Park So-young, monitoring preparations from the secret Mars research station that officially didn't exist, sent her final report to Earth. All systems ready on this end. If this works, they'll never see it coming. On the last night before the deadline, Dr. Yoon Ji-woo stood alone in her laboratory, staring at the equations that covered every whiteboard in the room. In 12 hours, humanity would either send a message of surrender or demonstrate that even primitive species could surprise their would-be conquerors. She picked up her phone and called Admiral Kim. "We're ready," she said simply. "Are you sure this will work?" he asked. Dr. Yoon looked at the screen showing Earth's chaotic radio spectrum, then at the orderly quantum patterns of alien communication. "Chaos always beats order," she replied. "Tomorrow we prove it." Day 30 arrived with clear skies over most of Earth. In the underground facility beneath Mount Jiri, Dr. Yoon Ji-woo sat before a wall of monitors displaying countdown timers from radio installations around the world. Her hands trembled slightly as she watched the seconds tick away toward 12:00 GMT, the moment when humanity would either surrender or fight back in the most unusual way possible. "Arecibo standing by," came the voice from Puerto Rico over the secure communication link. "Very large array ready for transmission," reported the team from New Mexico. "Goldstone prepared," called out the California facility. One by one, 47 radio installations across 6 continents confirmed their readiness. Each facility had spent weeks modifying their equipment to broadcast at precise frequencies, calculated by Dr. Yoon's team. The modifications had pushed the equipment beyond safe operating limits, but nobody cared about safety anymore. Admiral Kim Tae-ho stood in the Earth Defense Command Center, watching satellite feeds that showed the alien fleet positioned beyond the moon. The ships hung in space like dark daggers pointed at Earth, their quantum communication arrays glowing with an eerie blue light that telescopes could barely detect. 30 seconds to transmission, Dr. Yoon announced over the global communication network. Han Soo-jin monitored the quantum interference calculations on her screen. The numbers had to be perfect or the entire plan would fail. "All frequency harmonics are aligned," she reported. "The chaos pattern is ready for broadcast." 15 seconds, Dr. Yoon called out. In space, the alien fleet commander prepared to receive Earth's message of surrender. The beings had dealt with primitive species before, and the outcome was always the same. Lesser civilizations always chose survival over pride when faced with superior technology. 5 seconds, Dr. Yoon said, her finger hovering over the activation button. 3, 2, 1. Transmit. Every radio telescope on Earth fired simultaneously. The synchronized pulse contained no words, no diplomatic language, no plea for mercy. Instead, it carried the purest expression of human chaos, a mathematical pattern so random and unpredictable that it defied every law of quantum communication the aliens understood. The pulse raced outward from Earth at the speed of light, carrying, with it, the electromagnetic fingerprint of humanity's most chaotic broadcasts. Television signals mixed with radio static, emergency beacons blended with music, and weather reports combined with deep space astronomy data. The result was a wave of pure informational chaos that had never existed in the ordered universe the aliens knew. Commander Cha Jin-Soo watched from the lunar observatory as the alien ship suddenly went dark. The blue glow of their quantum communication arrays flickered and died as the chaos wave reached them. Within seconds, the mighty fleet that had threatened Earth found itself completely blind. "My God," whispered Colonel Park So-young from the Mars Research Station. "They're not just communication blind, they're completely cut off from each other." The alien fleet commander experienced something no member of his species had felt in 1,000 years: complete isolation. The quantum network that connected every ship, every crew member, every decision-making system, had been severed by the incomprehensible chaos radiating from the third planet. On Earth, Dr. Song Hai-rin monitored the alien response from Arecibo. Her instruments showed the electromagnetic spectrum around the alien fleet in complete disarray. "Their quantum entanglement patterns are collapsing," she reported excitedly. "They're trying to re-establish communication, but our interference is too random for their systems to compensate." The chaos was beautiful in its simplicity. While the aliens had built their entire civilization on predictable quantum patterns, humans had learned to work with disorder. Every rock song ever broadcast, every emergency radio call, every television commercial had contributed to the unpredictable electromagnetic signature that was now crippling the most advanced fleet in the galaxy. "How long will they stay blind?" Admiral Kim asked over the communication link. Dr. Yoon checked her calculations. "Their quantum systems are trying to adapt, but it's like trying to solve a puzzle where the pieces keep changing shape. I estimate 12 to 15 minutes before they can establish basic communication again." For 12 minutes and 37 seconds, the Galactic Confederation fleet experienced true helplessness. Ships that had conquered dozens of worlds drifted in space, unable to coordinate with each other or communicate with their home planets. The perfect order that had made them powerful had become their weakness when faced with the beautiful chaos of human communication. When their systems finally began to come back online, the alien fleet commander realized that everything had changed. The primitive species they had come to intimidate had demonstrated a level of technological sophistication that defied their understanding. How could a civilization that still used radio waves create quantum interference patterns that could disable advanced starships? Dr. Yoon Ji-woo leaned back in her chair as the alien communication networks slowly re-established themselves. The screens around her showed the fleet struggling to regain coordination, their quantum patterns flickering uncertainly as they tried to filter out the ongoing interference from Earth's radio transmissions. "They understand now," she said quietly to Han Soo-jin. "We're not just primitive creatures making noise in space. We're a species that has learned to weaponize chaos itself." Admiral Kim's voice came over the communication system. "Dr. Yoon, are you seeing what our deep space monitors are picking up?" She looked at the long-range detection screen. The alien fleet was moving, but not toward Earth. They were pulling back, repositioning themselves farther from the planet, whose radio signals had just demonstrated the power to turn their greatest strength into their greatest vulnerability. "They're afraid," Dr. Yoon said with wonder in her voice. For the first time in their history, they're afraid of a species they thought was primitive. The hunters had become the hunted, and the prey had revealed itself to be something far more dangerous than anyone had imagined. The alien response came 18 hours after their communications had been restored. Admiral Kim Tae-ho watched the deep space monitors as 12 massive ships began moving toward Earth, no longer hanging back beyond the moon but advancing with obvious hostile intent. The blue glow of their weapon systems could be seen even through the basic telescopes at ground-based observatories. "They're not trying to negotiate," reported Dr. Song Hee-rin from her monitoring station. "I'm detecting massive energy buildups across their entire fleet. These aren't communication arrays anymore. They're charging weapons." In the underground command center, President Lee Da-hai received updates from military installations around the world. The brief moment of triumph from the successful interference attack had been replaced by the grim reality that humanity had just made the most powerful military force in the galaxy very angry. "How long until they reach weapons range?" she asked General Bei Junho. "At their current speed, approximately 6 hours," he replied. "Their ships are larger than anything we've ever built, and our satellite scans suggest they're heavily armed. But 30 million kilometers away on Mars, Colonel." Park So-young was preparing humanity's first real surprise. The Red Planet's research station had been publicly described as a small scientific outpost, but the reality was far different. Hidden beneath the rusty surface were weapon systems that had been under construction for over a decade, built using technology recovered from alien crashes that governments had kept secret from their own people. "Phoenix Base to Earth Command," she transmitted on the quantum-encrypted channel that the aliens couldn't intercept. "All systems are operational. We're ready to begin the Mars Protocol." The Mars Protocol had been developed in absolute secrecy after the first alien wreckage was discovered in the Sahara Desert in 2019. Scientists had spent years reverse engineering the crashed ship's technology, learning to build weapons that could function in space. The project had been dismissed as impossible by most experts, but the small team of engineers had persisted. "Confirm your target acquisition," Admiral Kim responded from Earth. Colonel Park checked her targeting computers. The alien fleet was perfectly positioned between Mars and Earth, assuming that the primitive planet below had no defenses beyond its atmosphere. They had no idea that humanity had been preparing for this day for years. "Target acquired," she confirmed, initiating surface weapon deployment. The Martian surface erupted in a dozen locations as hidden weapon platforms rose from underground installations. Each platform contained railgun systems that could fire projectiles at significant fractions of light speed, using power from nuclear reactors that had been quietly assembled over the past 5 years. At the same time, Lieutenant Colonel Nam Yu-jin activated the Lunar Defense Network from her position on the moon's far side. The facility was supposed to be a simple radio telescope, but the massive dish could do more than listen to space. It could broadcast focused energy beams that would disrupt the quantum systems of any ship that came too close. "Lunar Base to Earth Command," she reported. "Cloaked defense grid is active, beginning interference protocol." The alien fleet commander received the first indication that something was wrong when his navigation systems began showing conflicting information. The ships that had been moving in perfect formation toward Earth suddenly started drifting off course as their quantum guidance systems encountered interference from the lunar facility. "What's happening to our coordination?" demanded the second-in-command as 2 ships nearly collided while trying to maintain formation. "Unknown interference source," came the reply from the fleet's communication officer. "Our quantum networks are being disrupted by some kind of focused transmission." But the real shock came when the first railgun projectiles from Mars reached the alien fleet. The high-speed metal slugs weren't large enough to destroy the massive ships, but they didn't need to be. Each projectile carried a small quantum interference device that attached to the ship's hull and began broadcasting the same chaotic patterns that had blinded the fleet earlier. "We're being attacked," the fleet commander realized as his ship's systems began failing one by one. But from where? On Earth, Dr. Yoon Ji-woo watched the battle unfold from her command center. The satellite feeds showed alien ships turning their weapons on each other as their friend or foe identification systems were corrupted by the quantum interference devices. Ships that had worked together for decades suddenly couldn't tell which vessels belonged to their own fleet. "It's working," she said with amazement. "They're so dependent on their quantum networks that they can't function without them. When we corrupt their identification systems, they think everyone is an enemy." Captain Oh Min-jun coordinated the Earth-based portion of the attack from his command post. Every satellite in Earth's orbit had been secretly modified over the past month, turning communication satellites into quantum interference broadcasters. The network created a shell of chaotic electromagnetic energy around the planet that made it impossible for the alien ships to get accurate targeting information. "Earth satellite network is at full power," he reported. "The aliens can't get a clear lock on any ground targets." The battle that followed was unlike anything in recorded history. The alien fleet, accustomed to perfect coordination and flawless communication, found themselves fighting blind against enemies they couldn't identify. Ships fired on each other while trying to reach Earth, their quantum systems corrupted by human-generated chaos. "They're retreating," reported Dr. Song Hyerin as she watched the alien fleet's movements. "No, wait. They're not retreating. They're just completely confused. They don't know which direction is safe anymore." Admiral Kim watched the satellite feeds with growing amazement. The most powerful military force in the galaxy was being defeated not by superior firepower, but by humanity's ability to create controlled chaos. The aliens had built their entire civilization on order and predictability, and humans had just shown them what beautiful disorder could accomplish. "Sir," called out a communications officer, "we're receiving a transmission from the alien fleet. It's a request for ceasefire." The alien transmission arrived on all frequencies simultaneously, something that would have been impossible using human technology. But instead of the cold, commanding tone of their original ultimatum, this message carried what could only be described as desperation. "Earth forces, this is Fleet Commander Talveth of the Galactic Confederation. We request immediate cessation of hostilities. Our ships are damaged, and our crew members are injured. We ask for mercy." In the underground command center, President Lee Da-hai listened to the translation with a mixture of satisfaction and careful caution. Around the table, military advisors and scientists who had spent sleepless weeks preparing for this moment now faced a completely different challenge: what to do with victory. "They're asking us to stop attacking," Admiral Kim Tae-ho said, though his voice carried no triumph. "But they're not surrendering. They're asking for mercy." Dr. Yoon Ji-woo studied the quantum interference patterns on her monitors. The alien fleet was still trapped in the electromagnetic chaos field that Earth's satellites were broadcasting, but their ships had stopped firing on each other. "Their quantum systems are adapting slowly," she reported. "They'll regain full coordination in maybe 6 hours if we maintain current interference levels." "What if we don't maintain them?" asked General Bae Jun-ho. "Then they'll be back to full combat capability in 30 minutes, Dr. Yoon replied. "But here's the interesting part. We can maintain this interference indefinitely. Our satellite network can keep broadcasting chaos patterns for years if necessary." The response from Earth came not from the military command or the political leadership, but directly from Dr. Yoon's facility. She had spent 3 weeks creating the technology that had saved humanity, and she felt she had earned the right to speak for her species. "Fleet Commander Talveth, this is Dr. Yoon Ji-woo of Earth Defense Research. You wanted a message about our electromagnetic transmissions. Here is our answer. We are not turning them off. We are turning them up." The transmission that followed would be remembered as the moment when humanity announced its arrival on the galactic stage. Dr. Yoon's voice was calm and professional, but her words carried the weight of an entire planet behind them. "You came to our world assuming we were primitive because our technology appears chaotic to you. You demanded we stop our radio transmissions because they interfered with your perfect quantum networks. You threatened to destroy us because you believed we were too weak to resist. You were wrong about everything." From the Mars research station, Colonel Park So-young watched the alien fleet through her telescopes. The massive ships that had seemed so threatening just hours ago now drifted helplessly, their crews struggling to understand how their advanced technology had been turned against them by a species that still used radio waves. "The truth is, Doctor," Yoon continued, "chaos is not a weakness, it is our greatest strength. You have built your civilization on order and predictability, but we have learned to thrive in disorder. Our electromagnetic noise is not pollution. It is the sound of a species that refuses to be silenced." The alien fleet commander tried to respond, but his communications were still corrupted by the ongoing interference. The quantum networks that had connected the Confederation's worlds for thousands of years were useless against the beautiful randomness of human technology. "We can project this quantum chaos across interstellar distances," Dr. Yoon explained. "Every quantum network in your civilization is now vulnerable to our interference. Every ship, every communication system, every computer that relies on quantum entanglement can be disrupted by our chaotic patterns." President Lee Da-hai took over the transmission. However, we are not interested in conquest or destruction. We offer you a choice. Leave our system and never return, or stay and learn to coexist with a species that does things differently than you expected. The response took 3 days to arrive, but when it came, it changed everything. The Galactic Confederation Council, speaking for 12 different alien civilizations, sent a formal invitation for Earth to join their alliance as an equal member. "We have underestimated your species," the message began. "Your unique approach to technology and your ability to find strength in what we perceived as weakness has shown us new possibilities. We invite you to share your knowledge with the galaxy." 6 months later, Dr. Yoon Ji-woo stood on the observation deck of humanity's first embassy ship, watching alien vessels maintain a respectful distance as her ship approached the Confederation's central station. The other species had learned to be careful around human technology, not because it was more advanced, but because it was unpredictable. "They're still afraid of us," Han Soo-jin observed, noting how the alien ships kept their quantum communication arrays powered down whenever human vessels were nearby. "Good," Dr. Yoon replied. "Fear keeps the peace better than friendship sometimes." The embassy ship's communication officer received a transmission from the station ahead. "Earth vessel, you are cleared for docking. Welcome to the Galactic Confederation." Admiral Kim Tae-ho, now serving as Earth's first galactic ambassador, stepped onto the observation deck. "The Confederation Council wants to discuss establishing quantum interference protocols for all member species. They're worried that other primitive worlds might develop chaos-based weapons." Dr. Yoon smiled as she watched the massive alien space station grow larger ahead of them. "Let them worry. We've shown the galaxy that different doesn't mean inferior. Sometimes the species that others consider primitive are the ones who change everything." The message Earth had sent was simple but clear. Humanity would not be silenced, controlled, or underestimated. They had wanted a response to their demands, and they had received it in the most human way possible: creative, chaotic, and completely unexpected.